There is a sacred current flowing within you, a living, breathing essence more ancient and subversive than anything humanity has ever named. For 2,000 years, institutions have hidden it beneath symbols and rituals. The mystic George W. Carey called it the all of Christ. The early Gnostics knew it as the sacred secretion, and those who truly sought enlightenment discovered it not by reaching upward toward a distant heaven, but by awakening what was already within. The divine chemistry produced cyclically by the pineal and pituitary glands, what later hardened into religious dogma, began as a luminous map of the human body itself. The 33 vertebrae of your spine mirror the 33 stages of ascension, the same number the Freemasons called their highest degree. Golgotha, the place of the skull, is not only a site in history, but the inner summit where divine energy rises and blossoms into illumination. The long-forbidden Gospel of Thomas whispered this truth long ago, that the Christ to be followed is not an external savior but an inner birth within your very nervous system. Yet humanity was trained to squander this sacred all through endless distraction, indulgence, and illusion. The secret was never truly lost. It was deliberately hidden, mocked as fantasy, dismissed as pseudoscience, buried beneath empty rituals that preserve form without fire. There is a process within you, automatic, divine, and perfect, which, if left unobstructed, restores harmony, dissolves suffering, and transcends the cycle of decay. Carey revealed this nearly a century ago in his forgotten masterpiece, God-Man, the Word made flesh. His revelation shattered the illusion that salvation comes from somewhere else, from a dying Messiah, from a guru on a pedestal, from an institution claiming authority over spirit. For the true temple of transformation is not made of stone. It breathes within your spine, pulses in your blood, and waits in the silent rhythm of your own being. At this very moment, modern science has already unveiled what the mystics once whispered in metaphor. The instruments of medicine have mapped the brain structures involved, traced the pathways of light within the nervous system, and identified the very neurotransmitters released when a human being experiences what ancient traditions called the second birth. What Dr. George W. Carey uncovered in the early 1900s by decoding the hidden anatomy behind sacred scripture should have forever breached the realms of religion and neuroscience. Yet, his discovery was quietly dismissed, buried beneath centuries of institutional control, for it exposed a truth that threatened every spiritual monopoly on earth. The Christic all mentioned in the scriptures is not a poetic symbol, it is a tangible, measurable secretion, produced by your pineal and pituitary glands in divine rhythm with the lunar cycle. When the moon passes through your birth sign, moment that can be calculated with perfect accuracy, these glands enter a heightened state of alchemy. They begin to secrete a rare neurochemical essence, the same sacred fluid the ancients guarded in mystery schools and temples. This luminous substance then descends through the spinal column, moving like a river of light through your central channel. But in most people, it never completes its holy ascent. It is dissipated through the distractions of daily life. Every surge of anger, every indulgent desire, every intoxicating escape burns this sacred all away, leaving the human being locked in the limited field of ordinary awareness, like a divine instrument muted to half its potential. What makes this revelation so striking is not its novelty, but its universality. From Egypt to India, from the Taoist monasteries to the Christian mystics, the same secret was whispered beneath different names: the inner Christ, the Kundalini, the sacred breath, the elixir of life. Each pointed toward the same inner mechanism of rebirth, and yet humanity was taught to seek outwardly what was designed to awaken within. The ancient Egyptians encoded this mystery in the 33 degrees of Osiris's initiation, the same sacred number reflected in the 33 vertebrae of the human spine. It was never coincidence. It was a mirror between heaven and anatomy. The Hindus, with extraordinary precision, described this same ascent as the journey of Kundalini through the nadis and chakras, each energy center aligned perfectly with its corresponding nerve plexus, each a gate of consciousness waiting to be opened. The Gnostic Christians, long before their teachings were silenced by the Church of Rome, declared openly that the life of Christ symbolized this very path. His 33 years were not merely biographical, they were allegorical, each year a step upward along the vertebral ladder, culminating in resurrection at Golgotha, the place of the skull. In Aramaic, that name was no accident. It referred precisely to the holy transmutation that unfolds within the cranial temple, where spirit and matter unite. In the 20th century, the mystic teacher Samuel Weir, often called the reformer of modern Gnosticism, gathered these scattered fragments of ancient wisdom and wove them into a living science of transformation. He revealed that the master glands, the pineal and pituitary, are the biological Joseph and Mary, forever conceiving the inner Christ through the sacred secretion that rises within. Decades later, research into endogenous DMT production and meditative neurochemistry began confirming what the ancients already lived, that the human brain is not merely an organ, but a divine laboratory, a cosmic pharmacy capable of producing the very substances that bridge body and spirit. And yet, the question remains one that should haunt any true seeker of light. Why has this knowledge been hidden for so long? Why have the keys to inner resurrection been buried beneath dogma, when the entire mechanism of enlightenment pulses quietly within every human being? The truth reveals not a conspiracy of men hidden in dark chambers, but something far more insidious, a conspiracy of institutionalized ignorance. For when a human being discovers that the process of crucifixion and resurrection can be initiated from within, without priests, without payment, without bowing to any earthly authority, that person becomes spiritually sovereign, and a sovereign soul cannot be manipulated through the threat of hell or the promise of paradise. True liberation begins where dependence ends. This sacred science asks for no blind belief. It demands awareness. It calls for an understanding of lunar rhythms, the discipline to preserve your vital essence, the skill to consciously raise it, and above all, the courage to confront the inner guardians that stand at each gate of ascension, your own unhealed fears, your own shadows, your own illusions. The sacred mantras, I.L. Henry Clinton, Krishna, are not mystical poetry but vibrational keys, vol frequencies that resonate through the cranial chambers, activating the glands and circulating the divine all within. Each sound, when spoken with intent, stirs the alchemy of the inner temple. The evidence of this forgotten truth has been carved into stone, waiting for eyes that can see. Gothic cathedrals, with their twin towers, mirror the pineal and pituitary glands, the holy conduits of light. The central nave represents the spinal column, the path of ascension, and the altar, concealed within the sanctum sanctorum, corresponds to the thalamus, the seat of mystical union where heaven and flesh meet. Every ancient tradition, from east to west, from temples to cathedrals, left behind the same message and symbols. The kingdom is within. Now the question is whether modern humanity will remember, whether we will have the courage to follow the map to its final revelation, to discover that the kingdom of heaven was never a distant reward, but a living neurobiological reality, pulsing in every human being, patiently awaiting conscious activation. The priests of ancient Egypt guarded a secret so powerful it could have rewritten the entire history of Western civilization, hidden deep within the innermost chambers of the pyramids, far beyond the reach of the uninitiated. They taught that the resurrection of Osiris was never a myth about distant gods. It was an initiation, a precise manual for awakening the divine current sleeping within every human being. The 33 degrees of Assyrian initiation were not random symbolism. They mirrored the 33 vertebrae of the human spine, the living ladder of ascension. Coincidence? Only for those who have not yet seen how the great religions fragmented one universal truth into disconnected doctrines. That serpent rising from the foreheads of the pharaohs, the urias so often dismissed by archaeologists as mere ornamentation, marks the exact point where your pineal gland rests, the inner eye of illumination. The Egyptians were not creating decorative art. They were recording the science of divine physiology, a process of neurochemical activation that transfigured mortals into luminous beings, endowed with powers our modern world can scarcely imagine. And this wisdom was not confined to Egypt. Across the vast oceans, the sages of ancient India taught the same inner technology under a different name. They called it Kundalini, the fire serpent coiled at the base of the spine. It is not a poetic symbol for spiritual seekers to recite in yoga studios. It is a real bioelectric force, measurable even by the instruments of modern science when awakened. The yogis, through direct inner exploration, charted 3 sacred channels, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. The feminine and masculine currents, when brought into perfect harmony, ignite the central column, and when that balance is achieved, a luminous explosion occurs in the spine, an event so profound that it forever alters the fabric of perception, birthing a consciousness no longer bound by the limitations of flesh and fear. The early Christians, the true initiates before Rome reshaped their message, also carried this secret flame. They were called the Gnostics, from the word gnosis, meaning to know, and it was precisely this knowing that condemned them. They were not executed for spreading falsehoods, but for unveiling truths too dangerous for institutional power to control. Their gospels, banned, burned, and buried in desert sands for nearly 2,000 years, tell a radically different story of Christ, one that turns salvation inward. When the Nag Hammadi texts were rediscovered in 1945, they shattered the illusion. In them, Christ does not promise redemption through faith or obedience. He teaches the alchemy of awakening, the activation of the inner Christ through mastery of vital energy. He who drinks from my mouth will become like me, and I will become him, says Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. These are not poetic metaphors. They are technical instructions, descriptions of a real physiological transmutation that occurs when the sacred oil within the brain is preserved and raised upward. The Gnostics understood that the 33 years of Christ's life were not literal biography, but code, each year representing one vertebra along the spinal column. The latter the sacred essence must climb until reaching Golgotha, the place of the skull, the very summit of consciousness. In the early 20th century, the physician George W. Carey dared to speak what others feared to see. Through his study of scripture and human anatomy, he unveiled that the cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid bathing the brain and spine, is none other than the biblical oil of joy. When charged by the secretions of the pineal and pituitary glands, it becomes the most sacred substance the human body can create, the true elixir of resurrection. Carey revealed that this all descends naturally through the spinal channel and is continually lost through ordinary living, but that, with awareness and discipline, it can be conserved, elevated, and returned to the brain during precise lunar phases. It was a discovery that should have united science and spirit, medicine and mysticism, heaven and body, but instead it was mocked, ignored, and buried, not because it lacked truth, but because truth, when known, makes humanity uncontrollable. And so the question echoes through time: why has the world been taught to worship symbols instead of activating the power they represent? Because if humanity ever remembered that the full mechanism of enlightenment already exists within them, the entire structure of spiritual control would crumble in a single night. No one would need priests, pastors, or gurus to stand between them and the divine, for they would realize that the true temple, the true altar, has always been within their own body. The medieval alchemists knew this same secret, yet they were forced to cloak it in allegory, concealing truth behind symbols to avoid the flames of the Inquisition. When they spoke of transforming lead into gold, They were not discussing crude metals. The lead was the dense sexual energy coiled at the base of the spine. The gold was this same force purified, ascended, and transmuted into divine light within the brain. The alchemical marriage, the union of opposites, the birth of the philosopher's child, all were poetic disguises for a sacred inner process. The fusion of masculine and feminine currents meeting at the center of the skull, giving birth to higher consciousness. In the 20th century, the mystic Samuel Weir unveiled what countless traditions had guarded in fragments. After decades of direct experimentation and practice within his own being, he revealed that the key to every mystery lies in the intelligent use of sexual energy, not through oppression, as religion has demanded, nor through indulgence, as modernity insists, but through conscious transmutation, the redirection of the creative current back toward the source. This is not theory, but an exact spiritual science. Samuel mapped every step of the process with clarity and left behind dozens of books explaining the inner mechanics of this transformation. Teachings now freely available to anyone willing to look beyond dogma. Today, modern research is finally beginning to catch up. Neuroscience, endocrinology, and quantum biology all hint at the same revelation the ancient adepts already embodied, that within the human organism exists a latent technology, a living circuitry designed for transcendence. Every sacred text, every pyramid, every mandala has been pointing to it for millennia. And now, in this age of awakening, humanity stands at the edge of remembering what was never truly lost. Modern researchers have now confirmed what the ancients always knew. The pineal gland, that tiny jewel at the center of your brain, contains microscopic crystals capable of responding to electromagnetic fields. It is not merely a biological relic. It is a living antenna, attuned to frequencies of creation itself. In moments of deep mystical experience, it releases psychoactive compounds that expand perception beyond the limits of the senses. Repeated meditative practice has been shown to reshape neural architecture, permanently altering the chemistry of consciousness. Science, after thousands of years of blindness, is finally beginning to glimpse what the mystery schools of old had safeguarded all along. Across continents and centuries, from Egypt to India, from the Taoist sages to the Christian mystics, the message remains identical because it arises from the same source, the human body itself. This process is universal, inscribed into your very design. You were born carrying within you the full mechanism of illumination. It functions even now, though unconsciously, as the sacred all descends through your spine, while your awareness scatters in countless directions. The question is no longer whether this is real. The historical, mystical, and scientific evidence is undeniable. The only question that remains is whether you will have the courage to apply it, to experience for yourself that the gods humanity has worshipped for millennia were not distant beings, but awakened humans, those who fully activated the divine potential that sleeps within you at this very moment. Right now, as these words pass through your mind, a sacred substance is flowing down your spinal column, a liquid more valuable than all the oil in the Middle East, more precious than all the diamonds in Africa, more radiant than every ounce of gold humanity has ever extracted. And yet, you are letting it slip away, not by sin or fault, but by ignorance, because no one ever told you what it truly is. This essence, which George W. Carey identified as the Christical of Scripture, is not a poetic symbol or mystical metaphor. It is a tangible neurochemical elixir, composed of hormones, neurotransmitters, and precise proteins, produced continually by your brain and in great abundance during specific lunar phases. It is the living bridge between flesh and light, the biological doorway to the divine. You are its vessel, you are its temple, and the key to unlocking its power has been within you all along. Modern medicine recognizes a fragment of this mystery and names it cerebrospinal fluid. Yet what even doctors do not know is that this fluid undergoes a profound transformation when the pineal and pituitary glands awaken in unison. During moments when consciousness thins, deep sleep, orgasm, near-death states, or deep meditation, these twin glands release alchemical compounds that alter the very chemistry of this fluid. It ceases to be ordinary. It becomes luminous, charged, divine, exactly as the ancients described. In the life of an ordinary person, this sacred substance is constantly being produced and just as constantly destroyed. It is created primarily during sleep, flows downward through the spinal column, and dissipates through the energy leaks of daily living. Each burst of anger burns it away. Each wasted orgasm drains weeks of its accumulation. Alcohol dissolves it completely, which is why every authentic initiatic tradition forbids intoxicants during sacred work. Excess sugar, heavy food, anxiety, and chronic stress all consume this inner gold, leaving the human being in a state of perpetual spiritual poverty, unaware of the treasure being lost drop by drop. Now, to understand the true miracle within you, we must turn to the sacred glands, the pineal and the pituitary. The pineal, no larger than a grain of rice, and nestled at the geometric center of your brain, is far more than the producer of melatonin that medical textbooks describe. It houses microscopic calcite crystals, living receivers that vibrate in resonance with electromagnetic fields. When activated through precise meditative and energetic practices, this gland secretes compounds that modern science is only beginning to detect, substances that open perception beyond the five senses and expand consciousness into higher dimensions of awareness. The pituitary gland, divided into two lobes like a divine couple, governs the entire endocrine system, but its true role reaches beyond physiology. The mystic Samuel Weir revealed that the pituitary is the biological Mary, the maternal aspect of the inner Christ. When it enters harmonic resonance with the pineal, the Joseph, through sacred sound, the miraculous conception occurs. In the hidden chamber between them, the third ventricle of the brain, the secret fluids merge. What results is what the alchemists called celestial dew and the Gnostics revered as the living waters. This process is not symbolic. It is literal, energetic, and measurable. When you vocalize the sacred mantra you, the vibration awakens the pineal, harmonizes the heart, and the final E resonates in the creative center. Together they form an acoustic current that ascends the spinal channel like a river of fire. The ancient Latin phrase ignis natura renovator integra, fire renews nature entirely, engraved upon the cross of the initiates, was never decoration. It was instruction, a vibrational formula. When chanted with proper rhythm, intention, and purity, it generates the inner pressure necessary for the sacred all to rise instead of fall, transforming the human being into the living bridge between earth and heaven. Each of the 33 segments of your spinal column is not merely bone and nerve. It is a living altar, a sacred station of transformation, the all that begins its journey as a dense, physical secretion. At the base of the spine refines itself with every vertebra ascends. Each spinal center acts as a temple of purification, a living distillery that transmutes raw life force into sacred light. These nerve plexuses correspond precisely to the chakras described in the ancient Hindu sciences, not as symbols, but as biological mechanisms of awakening. With every upward pulse, the essence becomes subtler, purer, more radiant, until, having passed through all 33 gates of fire, it arrives transformed in the highest sanctuary, the brain. At the center of this luminous fortress lies the thalamus, the true holy of holies within the human temple. When the sacred all, now transmuted into spiritual gold, reaches this chamber, an event occurs that the scriptures call the virgin birth, virgin, because there was no loss of creative force, no seed wasted. Birth, because within the skull, a new consciousness is literally born. The thalamus ignites, And this illumination is not a poetic metaphor, it is visible, measurable. Modern scans reveal an eruption of electrical activity in this region during moments of profound spiritual experience. The ancients were not writing myths, they were documenting the physiology of enlightenment. In this moment, the brain, bathed in the radiant awe, activates dormant regions long considered silent. What science calls extraordinary phenomena, clairvoyance, telepathy, conscious astral projection, are not supernatural gifts. They are the natural functions of a fully awakened nervous system. You do not need to believe this. You are invited to verify it, as every genuine initiate throughout history has declared. Don't believe, experience. The knowledge is complete. The mechanism has never been lost. It is alive within your body at this exact moment, waiting only for your decision to activate it or to continue wasting it. The lunar cycles, ignored by modern science but revered by ancient initiates, govern this process. Each new moon opens a fresh opportunity. Each wasted cycle is a missed ascent up the ladder of the 33 degrees that separates the sleeping human from the awakened Christ within. The moon is not only moving the tides of the oceans, it is moving the tides within you. Every pulse of lunar energy stirs the inner waters, guiding the sacred all upward or downward depending on your state of consciousness. The heavens are not distant, they are mirrored in your own body. The same gravitational rhythm that stirs the seas also calls your inner currents toward the light, if only you will listen, if only you will rise. The cerebrospinal fluid, the blood, the lymph, all of them dance to the rhythm of the same celestial drummer. The moon, that silent silver guardian in the night sky, commands these internal tides with the same precision that it commands the oceans. Twice each day, the Atlantic bows to its pull. So to do your inner waters, in a choreography few have ever learned to read. Modern science quietly acknowledges what it refuses to speak aloud. Psychiatric wards overflow under the full moon. Maternity rooms fill with cries of new life. Emergency rooms prepare for unpredictable chaos. Everyone feels the lunatic pulse, but only the initiates understand why. The ancients knew that the moon is not merely a reflection of sunlight. It is the metronome of the cosmos, governing the secret rhythm of the sacred all. To know the exact window of your own highest spiritual power, you don't need mysticism, only astronomy. Every month, as the moon returns to the zodiac sign it occupied at the moment of your birth, the temple within you begins its most sacred ceremony. The moon's journey through the 12 signs takes roughly 27 days. It lingers for 2.5 days in each, and when it re-enters your natal sign, your inner laboratory ignites. The pineal and pituitary, your celestial pair, enter into resonance, generating a flood of secretions that ancient Chaldeans charted 5,000 years ago. The preparation begins 3 days before this lunar return. This is not superstition. It is biology. Your system needs time to purify the channels, harmonize its chemistry, and align with the cosmic rhythm that will soon descend. Every meal, every thought, every emotion during these 3 days shapes the alchemical terrain of your body. Alcohol dissolves the sacred oil before it can rise. Heavy foods obstruct the internal pathways. Wasteful sexual acts deplete the reservoirs that fuel ascension. These disciplines are not punishments. They are technologies of liberation. Then comes the sacred window. 2.5 days of lunar potency when your body becomes a living antenna. The pineal, containing calcite and magnetite crystals, vibrates in direct response to the moon's magnetic field. Measurable changes occur. Melatonin levels shift, neurotransmitters surge, and unidentified compounds begin to flow. The very substances ancient mystics called ambrosia. Simultaneously, the pituitary modulates every hormonal process, creating a neurochemical symphony that occurs only in this brief cosmic alignment. The ancients called this the 5.5 days of the inner moon, the monthly doorway through which human beings can rise beyond their limitations. But here lies the danger that has destroyed countless seekers. Kundalini is not a gentle goddess waiting to be summoned. It is lightning in liquid form, condensed electricity, divine fire capable of both illumination and destruction. When awakened prematurely, it burns everything unprepared within its path. Modern medical journals call it Kundalini syndrome, describing the same phenomena initiates have warned about for centuries. Searing heat along the spine, unbearable cranial pressure, hallucinations, disorientation, a tearing of the mind's boundaries. To awaken this fire without inner purification is to invite chaos into the temple. That is why psychological work is not a side path. It is the foundation. Every unresolved emotion, every shadow, every hidden desire is an energetic obstruction. Lust in the second chakra is not a sin. It is a blockage. Anger in the solar plexus is not merely an attitude. It is a knot that diverts energy into destructive currents. Pride in the heart, envy in the throat, illusion in the mind. Each one is a guardian of a gate, a sentinel that tests your readiness to pass. These are the guardians of the threshold that the Gnostics spoke of, not mythic monsters, but living energies within you, defending the doorway between the human and the divine. They cannot be defeated by repression or willpower, only by light, the light of understanding. To face them is to face yourself, to dissolve the illusion of separation, and to prepare the vessel for the descent of fire. The lunar cycles will continue whether you are ready or not, but for the awakened one, each full moon is not just an astronomical event, it is an invitation to rise with the tide of your own divinity. When the sacred fire of Kundalini begins to rise and meets the blockade of lust in the second chakra, what unfolds is not a blissful ascension, it is confrontation. Every repressed desire you've buried, every fantasy you've denied, every distortion of love you've hidden under the carpet of your mind will rise to the surface, like ghosts demanding recognition. The serpent does not skip what is unresolved. It magnifies it. If you have not purified your inner temple, if you have not faced the fragments of yourself with honesty and compassion, that very energy will feed your shadows instead of dissolving them. This is how those once radiant mystics fall. This is how revered teachers, touched by true power but unprepared for its purity, descend into scandal. They awaken the fire before cleansing the house. The mantra Klim Krishna Govindaya Gopi Jana Vallabhaya. Swaha was never meant as mere devotional poetry. It is a precise vibratory key, a living formula where each sound awakens a different gate within you. Klim ignites the fire at the base of the spine. Krishna elevates this current toward the second chakra, transforming raw desire into refined vitality. Govindaya purifies and directs the force through the solar plexus, mastering emotion and will. Gopi Jana Vallabhaya expands it through the heart, where love ceases to be possession and becomes offering. And finally, Swaha releases the ascending energy toward the brain, offering it back to the divine source. But remember, sound alone is not salvation. The mantra is a map, not the journey itself. It amplifies the process, but does not replace the inner labor of self-observation. The real discipline is silent and relentless. To catch each psychological impulse the instant it arises, to name it, understand it, and withdraw your energy from it. That is the daily alchemy. Every time you refuse to feed a defect, you reclaim a portion of divine fire from its chains. This is the sacred warfare, not against the world, but within your own consciousness. The physical preparation mirrors the inner one. 3 days before your lunar period, the body must begin its purification. Alcohol must be completely eliminated. It dissolves the very essence you are trying to refine. Animal protein must be reduced. Water must increase to 3 liters daily to cleanse the channels. Mugwort tea awakens the pineal gland. Its active compounds cross the blood-brain barrier and interact with receptors long forgotten by modern medicine. Ginkgo opens cerebral circulation. Peppermint enhances neurotransmitter production. Every plant used in the ancient rites had its precise function in the inner laboratory of transmutation. Fasting during the 2.5 days of lunar potency is not ascetic punishment, it is sacred strategy. Heavy food drags the vital currents downward. Light food liberates them. Fruits, raw vegetables, and living juices keep the energy fluid and upward flowing. Each heavy meal taken in this period delays the work another month. Each act of indulgence postpones the resurrection by another lunar cycle. Breath, too, becomes the alchemical bellows of transformation. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, remain empty for 4. This is the square breath, the rhythm of balance. Practice consciously. It creates internal waves that move the cerebrospinal fluid up the spinal column, propelling the sacred all toward the brain. Breath is bridge. Rhythm is key. Awareness is fire. Understand, this process is not religious ritual. It is neurospiritual technology. Every practice, every mantra, every restriction serves one purpose: to reverse the flow of the descending current, to make the river run upward. The real temple was never built of stone. It is built of your bones, nourished by your breath, and illumined by your blood. All contemplative traditions, without exception, have emphasized the sacred act of breathing, because the breath carries far more than air. It moves life itself. It stirs the invisible currents that sculpt your destiny. Warm baths relax and open the subtle channels, but never hot, for excessive heat disperses the very energy you seek to contain. A cold shower at the end seals the circuit, anchoring and directing the current inward. Every gesture, every rhythm, every temperature corresponds to hidden laws of the body that modern science has forgotten. During these 5.5 sacred days, every act, what you eat, what you think, how you breathe, either supports or sabotages your crystallization. Most people waste all 12 or 13 initiatic opportunities the lunar year offers. A lifetime of conscious practice would provide hundreds. Yet the lunar clock continues its silent rhythm, offering chance after chance to any soul who dares to awaken. The posture with which you begin this work determines success or failure before the first breath. Sit upon the floor or a firm chair, but let your spine stand like a living pillar, straight and luminous. This is not dogma, not Eastern symbolism. It is pure physiology. When you bend the spine, you pinch the channels through which the cerebrospinal fluid must ascend. When you straighten it, the river flows unimpeded from the root to the crown. Let your base rest firmly, shoulders relax, chin slightly tucked to align the cervical vertebrae. Place the tongue gently on the palate just behind the teeth. This ancient Taoist secret closes the circuit between the front and back currents of your energy. Body, simple, precise, eternal. The work begins not with imagination, but with perception. Bring your attention to the base of your spine, to the sacred bone that even anatomy calls sacrum. There, real heat lies dormant, not metaphorical, not symbolic, a tangible warmth born of metabolic concentration and awakened by conscious focus. Feel it. Do not visualize yet. Feel first. Let the fire announce itself. Let sensation become your teacher. Only when the body begins to respond with its own language should vision enter. This distinction between authentic perception and imaginative projection separates the alchemist from the dreamer, the initiate from the believer. Deep, rhythmic breathing is the motor of transmutation, not optional, but essential. Each inhalation draws subtle fire upward. Each exhalation refines it. As the rhythm stabilizes, the cerebrospinal current begins to pulse with intelligence, responding to awareness like a living river of light. Breath is the bridge between matter and spirit. When it is mastered, everything else follows. When it is neglected, nothing proceeds. This is the forgotten science of resurrection, the lost technology of the soul, waiting patiently within your own flesh. When the breath deepens and aligns with awareness, something miraculous unfolds. Your own biology begins to remember its divine design. Each inhalation is not merely an exchange of gases. It is the ancient rhythm of spirit animating flesh. As you draw air through your nostrils and hold it briefly, subtle pressure shifts ripple through your thoracic and abdominal chambers. These shifts create waves in the cerebrospinal fluid, the luminous current that carries consciousness itself, gently pushing it upward along the spine. Every breath becomes a sacred act of ascension, a bridge between the physical and the divine. The mantras that accompany this process are not poetic ornaments. They are vibrational codes, keys, designed to open the hidden gates within your energetic anatomy. The sacred sound Yao embodies the trinity of all creation. The first tone, like the in C, vibrates through the skull, awakening the crown and temples where divine intelligence resides. The second, the sound of I in Father, reverberates in the chest, unlocking the gates of compassion. The third, O, as in home, anchors deep into the belly, harmonizing the creative centers. Together they represent the descent and ascent of spirit, from heaven to heart to earth, and back again. The mantra Yenari, born from the Latin ignis, natura renovator integra, the fire renews nature completely, invokes the primordial flame that purifies all matter. Each syllable must be felt, not merely spoken, vibrating with its ancient resonance. Likewise, the Sanskrit Klim Krishnaya sustains its original Vedic tone, calling forth the Christic current, that universal consciousness that transfigures the lower forces into light. These are not empty words. They are living frequencies. Now visualization becomes sacred architecture. You are no longer imagining abstract light but witnessing the rise of the sacred all, a golden, viscous radiance, thick as honey and bright as dawn. It begins to ascend from the base of your spine, vertebra by vertebra. Each of the 33 vertebrae becomes a temple, chamber where crude essence refines into spiritual luminosity. What begins dense and earthy becomes subtle and radiant, climbing with patience and precision. Do not rush this process. When the energy meets resistance, and it will breathe through it, where lust constricts the second chakra, chant the corresponding mantra with humility and perseverance until the knot softens. Where anger hardens the solar plexus, let the sound dissolve it like gentle fire melting wax. This is not conquest but communion. You are reteaching energy how to move freely through the corridors of your own being. Patience here is divine discipline. You are not simply working through a lifetime's patterns, but the sediment of many incarnations. Each breath unthreads a thread of karma. Each vibration loosens another fossilized emotion. Then comes the sacred culmination, when the golden current finally reaches the brain center, the inner altar known as the thalamus, nestled between the pineal and pituitary glands. This chamber is the secret heart of the temple. Here the transmuted all gathers, thick and radiant, glowing like molten gold. It pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat, expands with each inhalation, and begins to overflow, bathing the entire brain in a river of divine intelligence. This is the true anointing, not symbolic, but biological and spiritual at once. You are witnessing matter sanctifying itself, energy remembering its source, and consciousness rebirthing through your own nervous system. Each wave of breath becomes a hymn of resurrection, and within that rhythm, the human and the divine finally meet.